Hello and thank you for joining College 2 Consulting. In the previous classes, I've talked about frameworks, and I've said a framework is very important and a framework is integral to a case. In today's class, I'm going to go over what a framework actually is and how to build a framework for any type of case. Okay, let's get into it. Framework of a framework within a framework, the inception of frameworks essentially. So first, let me talk about what a framework is. A framework is essentially a guide or a roadmap of how you plan to solve a case. Think about it as a movie trailer. It's a movie trailer saying what's going to happen or what you plan to do, your plan of attack, your strategy to solve this case. It doesn't mean there are answers on it. It just means what you plan to look at. And for every framework, there are at least two main parts. And this is how I view this. There's a macro level view first. The macro level is the overview, and this is very high level. You talk about the product, the industry, the competition, the overall market, and business concepts. Let's do an example together. Let's say that we're looking at Apple. Apple wants to unveil a new product, or let's do this. Apple is going to try to enter the smart home market, such as products like Nest and stuff like that. They're trying to enter this market, and they want to know how many people would buy this new smart house type of product and what they should sell it at, or how can they grow it. So first we need to look at the macro level view, the overview. What is this product? The product is a type of smart house where you can control temperature and lights from your phone or Apple device or whatever. So it'd be, what is this product? Does it already exist? What is it like? How does it work, etc.? What is the industry like? It's a very new industry, so it's not fragmented at all. There are only two real players in it. There's Google, that's trying to do the same thing with their Android base, and then Apple. And then you have Nest, which was bought by Google and some other folks like that, and Philips and whatnot. The market, is there a market for it? Well, we've seen people buy it, but right now it's very expensive because it's not commoditized yet and there isn't really scale. Great. And then we look at some business concepts such as I had mentioned scale. I had mentioned growth opportunity. So can this thing really grow, and is it viable in other countries later on as well? Can we expand it, and what do we price it as? Okay. So we look at the overall macro view of this case. Then there's the micro view. The micro view is now specific to clients. So every case will have a macro view, meaning the industry or the market in general, and then the micro view. And the micro view really just focuses on your client, which in this case happens to be Apple. So now we talk about what is Apple's current state. Well, right now they're looking at acquiring companies to do this for their Apple or iOS platform. Great. Financials. How much does this cost to do? How much do we have to price it at? What are some of the other prices or the other opportunity costs that we have to deal with in order to make this thing happen? Process and operations. How do we roll this out? How will Apple get this into people's homes? How do they market it? How do they make it work, etc.? People, meaning this doesn't mean consumers. This really means the people that work for Apple, the talent that's needed. Are there engineers to build this out? Do they have the capabilities? Do they have the supplies they need to do this? And then once you get that information, a second part of the micro aspect is the solution, your solution. Great. Now we determine if the market is ready for this type of product. Now we need to figure out, how can we also grow this? Is my solution feasible? What are the risks and issues behind that solution? Meaning, where could it fail, but how can I mitigate that? How much does it cost to implement my solution? And what are some examples that show how this could work, whatever your solution is? Okay, let's do some examples together to make this a little bit easier to digest. Okay, let's say this is your case. Why is company X losing profit, and how can we fix it? So, on a roadmap, here's what I always recommend. Rip out a new sheet of paper. One sheet of paper for your roadmap, no scribbling on it. You don't do any math on it. All it is going to be a roadmap. So here I'm going to draw out a sheet of paper. And at the top of it, I'm going to say, what is my framework? All right? So I'm going to start off with the market. I'm going to draw this box. I like to do a lot of drawing because it makes it blunt and it highlights what you're looking at and puts it in the interviewer's face, essentially. Under this, I'm going to say, I want to look at the product. I want to look at competition, market size, market share. So just for people who don't know, market size is essentially how big is the market, how many people, how much money is involved in the market. Market share is how much of that market do I own compared to competitors. So 5%, 10%, 50%, whatever you want to look at. Next, I'm going to look at revenue. Revenue, I'm going to also put a box around that. And then I'm going to connect this. So what this does is now I show my interviewer that we're going to look at market, then we're going to look at revenue. So it's a decision tree-like format. Under that, I'm going to look at what are the different revenue streams for company X that's losing profit. And I want to look at the change in revenue for those streams year over year. That's what Y over Y means. Next, I'm going to look at costs. Again, I'm going to highlight it by putting a box around it. I'm going to connect it to my market. And I say I want to look at what are the company's fixed costs, because this is a profit equation. What are their variable costs? What's the change in costs year over year? Where are costs increasing and where are they decreasing? And lastly, what are the ranks of costs? So what is my biggest cost? What is my second biggest cost? And how can I mitigate that? Now, the equation for profit is revenue minus cost times volume. Okay? So now I'm going to put a box around volume, and I'm going to connect this. So now what you can see is just from the general picture of my framework. I start off with market, go in revenue costs. Now we're moving into volume. So I want to expand or sell the products that have the most profit margin after looking at revenue and costs. I want to look at other potential growth strategies, such as acquisitions. I want to know where we can do some scaling, meaning helping it grow in an efficient means, cost-saving opportunities, and where areas we can improve the process. Okay? So this is the general framework. Now let's break it down into that macro-micro level view that I was talking about earlier. Let's do this again. Why is company X losing profit, and how can we fix it? So on my sheet of paper that's only designated for frameworks, I start off with market again. Okay? I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to write down what we talked about: product, competition, market size, market share. This is essentially my macro level piece of the framework. This is very generic. I'm just looking at overall. I'm not really looking at the company specifically. Next, then we go into revenues, and I talked about the revenue streams, change in revenue year over year, went into costs, did the same thing, highlighted costs, wrote out fixed costs, variable costs, change in year over year, rank of costs, and then volume. So this is the profit equation: revenue minus cost times volume. Here went into profit margins, growth strategies, acquisitions, scale cost savings, and process opportunities. Okay? Now this is my micro level piece. So this is just an example. And in the next other classes, you'll see how the framework will really put into play. But every case, just so you know, has a macro level and a micro level view. Use that to your advantage to come up with a framework when you don't know where to start. What can I look at from a macro level lens? And then how do I break it down into micro, meaning specifically for the client that we're working with? You're never going to do a case that's just only industry focused. There's always a client, because you have to get paid from someone. You don't get paid from the oil industry, you get paid from Exxon. Okay? So keep this in mind, and notice it when we go into our other classes. Okay? I will see you in the next class.